All right, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Walden Wong Art. Today, we're going to be looking at Joe Quesada's Wolverine that was inked by one of my patrons. His name is Daniel. So he did some inking over Joe Quesada's Wolverine splash page. But before we talk about that, a little bit about me. My name is Walden Wong. I'm a comic book artist from Marvel, DC. You can check out some of my work on my website. It's waldenwongart.com. And if you're an aspiring artist and you want me to take a look at your work and make one of these videos for you as well, where I'm critiquing your work, you can check out my Patreon page. My Patreon page is patreon.com/worldofart, patreon.com/worldofart, and over there there's different tiers that you can look at for mentorship tier. And if you just want to show support for some of these videos that I make and just want to say thank you, you can also check out that page as well. So without further ado, let's check out Daniel's Wolverine inks. Here we go. So this is the inks. Okay, before we take a look at the ink, let's take a look at the pencils. So the pencils are right over here, Joe Quesada's pencils. This Wolverine, I'm going to zoom in closer so everyone can take a look at Quesada's work. Very, very detailed. Like on the top, you see Wolverine, and then on the bottom, he's looking at the reflection of himself when he was Weapon X. So let's take a look at a quick. You know, that's him right there as Weapon X. Okay. So we're going to take a look at Daniel's inks, Daniel right over here. So these are his inks, and there's a lot of textures. So when Daniel sent me this image, looks like it cropped off a lot of the sides. So let's take a look. So right over here, so it looks like there's a lot of art that was missing. See that on the right side as well as the top side. So when you're scanning artwork, before you scan, especially if you're scanning on Photoshop, just make sure you're choosing the sizing area. Like do a pre-scan and then set your scanner to scan at full size. And then when you do a pre-scan, it will show that image that you're scanning, and then you can set the size that you're scanning. Because if you're just scanning without setting it, sometimes you're under scanning or sometimes you're over scanning, which take a little bit longer. So just make sure you're scanning the artwork a little bit more. I know you've inked it. I think you just forgot to scan it in the larger size. So let's take a look at the inks. So right away, I do see. Let me take a look here. I do see that there's a bump here. Let's take a look if it was on Quesada's line. So Quesada, the way he drew it, it was more rounded. But right over here, there's a little bump here. You want that line to be a little bit smoother. Let me take a look at this. So let's take a look at Quesada's work. Okay, so Quesada had this connected, but you didn't connect it here. And not only did it not connect, it kind of like it doesn't go into direction. So if you break up lines, the best way to do it is to make sure those lines connect when you're breaking lines up. You want to make sure it connects like this, okay? You don't want lines to go this direction, all of a sudden this one goes that direction. Try to make sure they connect, because right now, when there's a line breakage, the flow doesn't look as like it kind of off a little bit. Okay, the tree texture looks great. That looks like there's a lot of work on the tree. I like the noodling. Great job on the tree texture. I think that looks really good. A lot of nib work, a lot of bloops, a lot of textures. That looks very nice. Let's look at the tree. Let's see how Quesada did the tree. Okay, you added more, which is okay. So I noticed that you added more. So the penciler over here, Joe Quesada, he drew this where it's like this area, like there's some texture, but there's no texture over here. But when you decide to add texture, you added a different type of texture. Okay, so over here, if these textures were like this, it's probably better to keep that texture the same. Otherwise, why would that texture be different on this side? Okay, make sure, so this side is okay, but this side becomes a tree. It doesn't have those bushes growing here. Okay, this is a lot of work. I'm not gonna lie. Right over here, there's a lot of work. It looks pretty good. The water texture, see, it looks like you added more to the water than what was there, and that looks nice. That's a lot of work. Okay, so here's the thing with the water that I noticed. I think you're being creative over here. So some of the water that you're doing, they're very straight. Like sometimes as an artist, when the penciler draws it in, he doesn't really want too much going on. If there's too much going on, it distracts from the overall image, and it's kind of hard to see. If you have that, for example, like when Joe Quesada drew it, I think most of what he wanted was blacks over here. He's just using his pencils to like shade it in. So to add water, it looks okay. But if you're adding ripples like that, you're adding so many, it's necessary that you should add some like line that's on top too, because otherwise, why is there like these white lines that's all over the black areas, but then just no white lines on top of the, you know, the tree areas, you know, the trees, or on top of the wolf, or on top of Wolverine? Just like maybe one on top of Wolverine. Did Quesada add one there? Yeah, so Quesada didn't add one over there. Quesada is the penciler. Like you added those there. So in a way, that kind of distracts from the whole overall image, and it kind of doesn't make sense where there's these white lines that goes across on the black area, but there's no white lines. There's no ripples on the water. So as an inker, sometimes you have to think about, if you're adding texture, make sure the texture is consistent throughout, or not to add texture. Let's take a look at some of the fur work over here. So right away, I noticed that there's like there's a blocky pattern on the black here. Like I can tell that it was all inked in. Make sure you go in there and kind of go in there and have white tips over here. So when I say white tips, don't, like that block over there, instead of, let me see how Joe Quesada drew it. So you're adding more fur than what the penciler did. So if you're adding more fur, okay, I'm gonna go in here and ink some of the fur for you. So like use white to kind of like break up some of those lines. That way we don't have this blunt line that I see over here. So just kind of like go in there and add a little bit of a texture over here. This side looks pretty good, but then right here, there's a little bit of chunkiness. Let's see how the penciler did it. Penciler just added a few, and you went on added more. But there's all these black dots over here. These white dots, I would get rid of it and kind of go in there and be a little bit neater. So make sure this is a little bit neater over here. Okay, there's a lot of let me get the red pen, otherwise you can't see what I'm marking. Like there's too much of these little dots over here. When I'm inking fur and I'm going from white to a black area, I like having those lines kind of be consistently going like this, and I don't like those lines like to kind of like cross at each other. And then I'll go into pretend all the red area is going to be the black. Okay, I'll go in here, and then I'll go in here and I'll just add more, and I'll fill that in like this. Okay, this way I don't have that much like little scratch lines like that. Okay, so that's how I do it. So right here, there's a lot of crisscrossing happening over here. Okay, so that's majority of the fox. There's some crisscrossing happening. I wouldn't do that much of the crisscrossing stuff. The fur, let's see how Quesada drew it. Quesada added I'll stop saying Quesada. The penciler added like a black shadow here, and then you decided to go there and add texture. So consistency is really key. If you decide to add texture, make sure it's consistent throughout the whole image. So right here you have the pencil drew the fur going this direction. So when you're drawing the fur, it's going like this, right? They're nice and soft like this, but over here it gets kind of crushed. It gets kind of like short. Like you want to make sure it's consistent throughout, even if you're adding different textures. Okay, so make sure they're longer and they're kind of like a little bit thicker and spaced and not crisscross each other. Okay, I can see that you're trying to add. Sometimes less is more. I don't know if you heard that term before. Like if you add too much, it overtakes the whole image. But to kind of stay consistent is better. Okay, your taper lines are pretty good. I like the way you're doing taper lines. Some of them are like a little bit kind of off. You see how this one goes up and this one dents in and comes back out, and this one dents in and comes back out. Make sure they're consistent. Like for example over here, make sure they're a little bit more consistent. Okay, let's see how the penciler did it. Okay, can't see how the penciler did it. The images are too pixelated. Okay, so some of these looks pretty good. Okay, this looks pretty good. I like closing it. I like closing up some of my lines. Some of these lines here. When you're inking these lines, just make sure this part ends in the right area. So when you're doing this, make sure they're ending in the right area. The other option is to go back in there, use whiteout, and just erase that part if you like. For example, the shadow here should continue over here. So this part should be longer, this part should be longer. These lines that are drawn here isn't just lines, they're here to create a like a tone over here. So this one's too close. I would kind of shave that off a little bit. Okay, take a look at some of these other areas. Okay, good. Okay, so right here, you see this white area, this block, these rectangles, they're large, but as you get to here, it gets kind of muddy, and then it should be a little bit thicker. So when you're doing this, you want to create a gradual tone. If it's not a gradual tone like this, it disrupts the eye from seeing it as a tone. It's like from a further out perspective, when I'm looking here, it's almost like a tangent. It's almost like a blob with there. So you want to keep things that are consistent. Let me take a look at this. Okay. Yeah, so there's some areas that are good, some areas that can soften up a little bit just to be a little bit more consistent. Make sure when you're inking lines, there's a reason for those lines. Like for example, these lines over here, this is supposed to be a gray tone. So when they muddy up together, it's not it doesn't really like look that well. It could be when you're scanning it, if that's some of the gray pencils or if that's some of the blue lines, make sure when you're scanning it, you're removing some of the blues. Like to remove blues, pretend the red stuff that I've inked over here. Like say I scanned something and then everything is in black and white and I wanted to remove the blues. To remove the blues, what you need to do is use the magic wand, which is in Photoshop, and then click that, click this, and then it will select all the red areas. Once you select all the red areas, just press delete and it will delete all your red or your blues. So when you're inking in blue line, make sure here, I'm gonna go in here and draw a few red color stuff. Okay, say you're inking, you're scanning, once you're done, just some left residual blue over here. Okay, you know what, let's use blue so it doesn't confuse the viewers. Okay, so I have some blue lines over here, so I have some blue lines like leftover stuff over here, and then I want to remove some of the blues. Okay, and then they're all like right next to the edge of the inks. Okay, and how do I remove that? I'm not going to go in there and use my eraser and erase all of them. What I do is I use my magic wand in Photoshop, and then I'll zoom in and then I'll click one of them. When I click one of them, it selects everything that's blue. You see this little outline that's moving around? It selects everything that's on that image that's blue, and then I'll click the delete button on my keyboard and it will remove all the blue areas. See that? Okay, so if I wanted to remove the blue areas, that's how I remove it. I can also change it white if I want. If I wanted all that to be white, I just use my brush. Okay, enlarge my brush right over here, enlarge my brush, and just go back quickly and just kind of like draw over it and it will be white. So if some of those blobs or gray tones that you're darkening, just make sure you remove those. Okay, let me take a look at some of the other areas. Some hatch lines are good, some hatch lines, they're these blobs, probably some of the scanning work. You forgot to use white ink to like separate. Whoops, too big of a brush. So use white ink to separate this part right over here. Separate that because it's metal from the claws that are coming out. Okay, good. Okay, so if you created a white line over here, okay, make sure that white line is consistently throughout over here too. Okay, and make this a little bit, kind of extend this out a little bit, because it's kind of, I don't know, it makes this line like look way too thick over here. This line looks way too thick. Did the pencil draw that thick? Okay, so that was supposed to be a shadow, and this is the white part. So instead, go over here and just make sure. Fill, let me use red over here, and then fill that in so it doesn't look like it's a halo. At first it looks like a halo. So when I first started working in comics, I was working with a penciler. We were working on DC Comics, Justice League America, and then I was also getting hold too, and I was adding a lot of textures and doing a lot of funky stuff and adding a lot of different things that like the penciler didn't draw in. And then the penciler told me, Walden, sometimes it's nice that you can draw texture stuff and create tones and stuff, but sometimes less is more. When we draw things a certain way, we want it to be that way. We don't want it to be distracting. Too much flashiness is distracting. Okay, let's take a look at this Wolverine. Okay, so over here, I would taper these lines a little bit more soft. Right here, this triangle is a little bit too thick over here. So just make sure they're consistent. Okay, like that. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so I can see that you're scanning okay. When you scan, the lines are clean and crisp. So this tells me that some of these are a brushwork that's happening. Okay, if you're inking and then the brush, if the ink, sometimes when you're inking and then the ink is kind of grayish on original artwork, you're gonna get some of these over here. Just make sure you dip your ink again if you're inking this traditionally by hand. So there you go. That is Joe Quesada's work, pencils, and Daniel's inks. This is the upside down. Here's the other side. Wolverine right over here. So there you have it. That is Daniel's work for inking work. He's one of my patrons on my Patreon page. So if you wanted me to look at your work, if you're an aspiring artist or any kind of artist and you want me to critique your work like this video, think about checking out some of my mentorships here on my Patreon page. So on my Patreon, the website is patreon.com/WaldenWongArt. There's a lot of different tiers that you can look at there. And if you want to learn more about me, again, my name is Walden Wong. I'm a comic artist in Marvel, DC. We've been doing comics for a while now. You can check out my website. It's WaldenWongArt.com. And on my website, there's different things that you can look at. There's a gallery, there's a store that you can buy stuff, there's news, there's events, and a lot of different things there. So until next time, keep on drawing. The more you practice, the better you get. Have a good day. Bye-bye.